This video is sponsored by the Professional Photographers of America, PPA. Join a community of over 30,000 photographers that includes equipment insurance, education, and business tools made specifically for small business owners like us. In today's video, I'm going to talk about 3 ways that you can light a backdrop, so let's get started. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. If you're not already subscribed, if you could please go ahead and press that button, and if everybody could sign up for the bell and give me a thumbs up, I would really appreciate it. Also, if you enjoy learning from me in these videos, you might also like learning from me on my exclusive members-only training platform, the Academy with John Gress. And that's where you'll get access to longer format tutorials than the ones that you'll find here on YouTube. You'll also get access to bi-monthly live Q&A sessions, which I think is probably the best feature of the Academy. You'll also get discounts on in-person workshops and much more. So for more information and to sign up for a 3-day trial, including a discount, just go to johngress.com/academy for more information. So in today's video, I'm going to show you 3 different ways to light a backdrop. And I'm not saying these are the only ways that you can light a backdrop. I just want to sort of show you different methods so that you might think about doing it one of these ways or your own way during your next photo shoot. So the first one I'm going to talk about today is the gradient method, and that's when you simply take a light with a standard reflector or a grid reflector. It's probably the one that came with your light, one of those that are about 7 inches or 18 centimeters. And you just want to put that on the modifier and then place it on a stand directly behind your model and point it at the base of the backdrop. So I was doing a gel series during this photo shoot with Christopher, and so for this first look, I started off by putting a yellow gel on my background light, and I pointed it at the base of my background. And then I lit them from the front with a red gel in a Parabolix 35D. Next, I added an edge light with a blue gel in an Elinchrom indirect softbox. It doesn't necessarily matter that the softbox is indirect. You could use any softbox and basically get the same result. So I started off by shooting with Christopher, and I realized fairly soon that my background light was tipped down a little too far. So I went ahead and pointed it up a little because I wanted to get that gradient a little higher in the frame and have it fall off near their shoulders. And I think you could agree that there's a lot of drama in this series, and it just looks great overall. And it was a very good and effective way to light the backdrop. Now this particular backdrop is gray paper, and I really like using gray when I'm using the gradient method, because what usually ends up happening is that I go from light at the bottom to black at the top, or furthest away from the light. You really can aim the light in different places around the frame if you like. And you'll get that black intensity on the top or farthest away from the light, so long as your subject isn't too close to the background, because what will end up happening is that light from your main light will end up spilling onto the backdrop, and then it will pull down the intensity of the effect. But before we move on to the next setup, the Professional Photographers of America, PPA, has some exciting news. You've probably heard me mention PPA before since I've spoken at Imaging USA, their annual convention. One of the key benefits that every full member gets is $15,000 worth of equipment insurance, and that policy just got a lot better. Now on top of that, you get full replacement coverage with a $350 flat deductible, or you can repair your equipment with a flat $50 deductible. Over the course of my career, I've had a handful of $600 repair bills, you know, when you drop your camera and yell, oops, and I had to pay for those out of pocket. And the idea that I could have gotten these covered for only $50 is amazing. Plus, I feel like all of us will experience a major theft at some point. I did back in 2003. And knowing that I could get my gear replaced for only $350 is really exciting. So click on the link in the description below to save $25 on your membership. And whether you're just beginning or you've been a pro for a while, PPA can help you take your business and your career to the next level. So the next method that I want to talk about today is the direct method. And this would be just basically where you take 2 lights on 2 stands, 1 on each side, and put that standard reflector back on there and point it directly at the background. Now, this is sort of a down and dirty way to do it, and it's not really the best way. So as you can see from this test that I did with a gray backdrop, you pretty much end up with two circles of light and an unevenly lit backdrop. Now, if this was a white backdrop instead of a gray backdrop, you could probably get away with it because you would just sort of really overexpose the middle and barely overexpose the edges. A good rule of thumb is when you're lighting a white backdrop is that you want to have it be about a stop brighter than your exposure, and you want to have your subject positioned about 10 feet or 3 meters from the backdrop. That way, the light that's hitting the backdrop won't bounce back onto your subject and affect your exposure or end up coming through the lens and causing a haze. This can happen a lot of times with a cheap filter, a dirty filter, or a cheap lens. So if you end up with that happening, just think about moving the model or cleaning the lens, or maybe you'll end up having to change the lens. The other thing is, if you're working in a very small and confined room, you might have your subject right up next to the backdrop, and if that's the case, you really can't light it. You're just gonna have to use your main light to illuminate the backdrop and then fix it in post or strip it out in post. So just keep that in mind. You're probably not gonna have room to light it actively. Now, you could change this direct method up, and you could place one light high and one light low and sort of shoot them across the backdrop. And I did that in this test, and I also moved the lights a little closer to the backdrop. But as you can see, once again, it is very uneven, and it's not that pleasing, and it doesn't really work that well. But there is a way that this sort of method can be successful, and that's when you're lighting the backdrop for effect. So in this shoot that I did with Christopher on my next look, I lit the backdrop with a blue gel high on my right, and then I sort of fashioned a purple gel low on my left. And so the way that I made that purple gel was by putting both a blue gel and a red gel in front of my light. This meant that I had to pump a lot of power through those gels in order to make the exposure, and that meant that my light ended up recycling in 1.7 seconds. And so as I was photographing Christopher, this time turned in the other direction so that the blue light was the main light and the red light was the kicker, some of the times that purple gel didn't fire, and it sort of created a happy accident. But overall, I really liked the results from this look. So the third way that we can light a background is the indirect method. And that's just where you shine the light away from the background and have it bounce off of something and then go back. So the most common way of doing that is by using two 30-inch umbrellas or 90-centimeter umbrellas, one on each side, with the light bouncing off of them and going back onto the backdrop. And so as you can see in this example, it will light the background fairly evenly, but there still is some fall off at the top and the bottom. The other way that we can light the backdrop indirectly, and I think this is probably the best way that you can light your backdrop, is by using two V-flats. So if you place one on each side in a V, so the black side is pointed towards the camera and the white side is open towards the backdrop, and then you shine the light with the 7-inch reflector on it into the V-flat. It will then hit the inside, bounce around, and then come back onto the backdrop. And as you can see in this example, it is very even side to side and top to bottom. So this would be my favorite way for lighting a backdrop. So I wanted to use the V-flat method on my third look with Christopher, and I was inspired by photographer Paul Green, who is one of my Instagram friends, because he had a great shot of a model on a solid white backdrop, and then he lit her from the front with a hard light with a red gel between that main light and her face, which cast a red light or shadow on the top half of her head. So I used that for my inspiration for this image, only I wanted to light the background blue because I thought that would play really well off of the red light on their face. So I put blue gels on the lights and I pointed them into the V-flats. Originally, I had it metering at 5.6 when metering on the backdrop, and I felt that was a little too bright, so I turned it down a stop, and that really intensified the color. Then I hung a 20 by 30 inch or 50 by 70 centimeter red gel off of a grip arm, and I placed it between Chris and the 35D. Because the Parabolic's 35D is a focusable parabolic reflector, I push the light all the way in, which creates a very hard light source. And I played with where I wanted to position Christopher, the gel, and the light in order to get just the right amount of definition from the red gel on their face. And I noticed fairly quickly that Paul's image had some nice edge lighting, and I wanted to get that look, so I took the two VFlats and the two lights and rotated them 90 degrees away from the model, which allowed them to illuminate the backdrop and also create some edge lighting on Christopher. Now, they were lit a little too much from the side, so I had them step towards the camera, and then I moved the camera back, the light back, the red gel back, and all of that stuff, which caused that blue light to just appear on the edges of their face, and I really like the results in the final images. So now to review, let's look at our 4 forensic images on the gray backdrop. So you'll see here by using the direct method with the two 7-inch reflectors pointed directly at the backdrop that it is fairly uneven, and we're seeing 2 round circles of light. And then if we take those lights and move them a little closer and angle them more so they go across the backdrop, we're also just seeing a really unevenly lit backdrop. Then using the indirect method with 2 umbrellas, you can see that the background is a lot better lit, but it still has fall off at the top and bottom. And then by placing those lights back in those 7-inch reflectors and pointing them into 2 V-flats and then having that shine back onto the set, things look a lot more even. So hopefully that gives you a lot of great ideas on how to light a backdrop during your next shoot. If you'd like to see a full breakdown of all of the looks that I did with Chris, including detailed settings information and a lot of behind the scenes footage, it is this month's member exclusive on the Academy. So just go to johngress.com/academy to check that out. And remember, click on the link in the description to get $25 off your new PPA membership. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.